My name is Stacey. I am 38 years old, and what Jesus showed me in those few minutes changed everything I thought I knew about funerals, grief, and eternity. I died, and Jesus showed me 7 mistakes Christians make at funerals. Some of them are more common than you think. Some of them may even be happening in your family right now. So before you scroll away, hear me out. If you have ever lost someone, are afraid of losing someone, or have ever wondered what really matters when standing beside a casket, you need to stay with me until the end. Because what Jesus told me about funerals could change the way you grieve, and could even save your loved one from hellfire. Let me back up just a little bit. It was a Tuesday afternoon in August. I had a severe allergic reaction to medication my doctor had just prescribed. My husband found me on the kitchen floor. By the time the paramedics got there, my heart had stopped. They worked on me for several minutes before they got a pulse back. The first thing I remember is that I wasn't in my kitchen anymore. There was no dramatic tunnel of light like I used to imagine when I heard NDE stories. It was more like, one moment I was here, and the next moment I was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere that felt more real than anything I had ever experienced on earth. And then he was there. Jesus. I knew it was him instantly. Not because of the way he looked, though there was something about his presence that I still can't find the right words for. I knew because of the peace that came with him. A peace that made every anxiety I'd ever carried feel like it belonged to someone else's life. He looked at me and said, "Stacey, I need to show you something. Something that matters to my people right now." I wasn't afraid. I was just ready. Whatever he wanted to show me, I wanted to see it. Then he brought me to what I can only describe as a place of watching. Like standing at a window, but the window showed me real moments. Real people. Real situations happening on earth. And the first thing he showed me was a funeral. I could see a family gathered around a casket. A mother, maybe in her 60s, had just lost her husband of 34 years. And her children were around her. And some of them were believers. Churchgoers. People who knew scripture. But what I saw in that room, Jesus pointed to it directly and said to me, "This is the first mistake. Watch what grief is doing to their hope." The woman's son, who I somehow just knew was a Christian, had completely broken down. And I don't mean he was crying. Jesus cried at Lazarus's tomb. He reminded me of that specifically. He said, "Grief is not the problem." I wept. Grief is human and I designed it. But watch what happens when grief loses its anchor. And I watched this man begin saying things like life had no point anymore. That God must have forgotten them. That nothing good would ever happen again. Jesus turned to me and said, "He is grieving as though the resurrection never happened. As though the empty tomb means nothing in this moment." He quoted it directly to me, 1 Thessalonians 4 verse 13. He said, "I never told my people not to grieve. I told them not to grieve without hope." Those are two completely different things. One is human. One is a denial of everything I did on the cross and everything I proved on the 3rd day. When my people stand at a casket and speak as though death has won, as though eternity is not real, they are not just expressing pain. They are telling everyone in that room, including the broken ones who need to see my faithfulness, that their faith stops working when life gets hard. And that hit me hard. Because I had done that. At my own father's funeral 6 years before this, I had said some of those same things. Jesus said, "Hope is not the absence of sorrow. Hope is what keeps sorrow from becoming the final word." Every funeral is an opportunity to testify. The watching world sees how my people carry loss. That testimony matters more than most Christians realize. Then the window shifted. He showed me something different. A woman, maybe mid-40s, who had just lost her mother. And I could see her searching. Just desperately searching for some way to feel close to her mom again. And then I saw where she ended up. She was on a phone call with someone claiming to be a medium. Someone who said they could connect her with her mother's spirit. And I felt Jesus's response to that. Not rage, but a deep grief. Like a parent watching their child walk towards something dangerous. He said, "This is the second mistake." And it comes directly out of the first one. When people grieve without hope, they start looking for comfort in places I have specifically warned them away from. He took me to Deuteronomy 18. He didn't just quote it, he explained it. He said, "My prohibition against mediums and consulting the dead is not an arbitrary rule. It is protection. Because the enemy knows grief better than most of my people realize. He knows exactly when someone is most vulnerable. And he disguises deception as closure. What feels like peace in those moments is not peace. It is a counterfeit. Real comfort only comes from me. I am the one who conquered death. I am the only one who actually knows what is on the other side. And I have given my people everything they need to be comforted." Then he said something that stayed with me. He said, "The woman looking for her mother through a medium is not looking for her mother. She is looking for me. The ache she feels is real. But I am the answer to that ache. Not a voice claiming to speak from eternity without my authority." He looked at me and said, "Tell them, Stacey. Real comfort does not come from trying to reach those who have already entered eternity. Real comfort comes from bringing broken hearts to the one who conquered death itself." The window shifted again. Now he showed me a different kind of funeral. This time, it wasn't one person. It was a whole room of people. And things looked normal on the surface. People dressed appropriately. A pastor speaking. Music playing. But Jesus pointed to the undercurrents happening in that room. And once he pointed them out, I couldn't unsee them. One man near the back was clearly more concerned about how he appeared than anything else. He made sure to cry at the right moments. Made sure to be seen greeting the right people. Made sure everyone knew how close he had been to the deceased. And there was a group of family members who had turned a corner of the reception area into what was essentially a competition about who had been most devoted, most present, most important in the life of the person who had passed. Jesus said, "This is the third mistake. Turning a funeral into a stage." He said it quietly, but he said it seriously. He said, "A gathering that should direct every heart toward me, toward the reality of eternity, toward the gospel, can become something else entirely when pride enters. And pride is subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It just quietly redirects attention away from me and onto the person who is grieving loudly enough to be noticed." He referenced Proverbs 16 verse 18. He said, "Pride goes before destruction." That is not just about obvious arrogance. It's about the quiet ways the human heart will choose self-attention even in the middle of a moment that should be about something much bigger. I designed funerals to be a doorway, a place where the temporary nature of this life becomes undeniable, a place where hearts are already softened and open. And in that open state, they are either pointed toward me, toward hope, toward eternity, toward the gospel, or they are pointed inward, toward grievances, appearances, and human drama. When my people turn grief into performance, they waste the doorway. I asked him, "Lord, is it wrong to feel things deeply at a funeral? Is it wrong to let people see that you're hurting?" He said, "No, never. I felt things deeply. I let people see it. But there is a difference between genuine sorrow shared openly and a performance designed to be seen and admired. You know the difference in your own heart. And I know it too." The next thing he showed me was the one that broke me the most personally. He showed me a funeral where two brothers hadn't spoken in 7 years. Their mother had died. And here they were, standing in the same room for the first time since some argument I couldn't make out the details of. And they were maybe 15 feet apart. But they might as well have been in different countries. And I knew one of them was about to leave without saying a word to the other. Jesus said, "This is the fourth mistake. And it might be the one that costs people the most. Allowing unforgiveness to stay buried in the heart." People assume that when someone dies, the bitterness surrounding that person dies with them. But that is not what happens. The grave does not resolve unresolved hearts. It often locks the bitterness in place. He quoted Mark 11 verse 25 directly. He said, "When you stand praying, if you hold anything against anyone, forgive them." Then he said something I wasn't expecting. He said, "That verse is not just about prayer. It is about the posture of the heart. You cannot stand in a place of death and mourning and still choose to carry bitterness, without it costing you something spiritually. Forgiveness is not saying the wrong didn't happen. It's not pretending the wound wasn't real. It is choosing to release the weight of that wound to me, instead of continuing to carry it." And then he said this, and I wrote it down the moment I came back to life because I didn't want to forget it. He said, "Sometimes the greatest gift you can give at a funeral is not flowers or words or food. It is the decision to walk over to the person you have refused to forgive and let go of the thing that has been separating you. Because the person in the casket cannot settle it for you anymore. The only people who can settle it are still breathing." I cried when he said that, because I had an aunt. We hadn't spoken in 4 years. And standing there with Jesus, I already knew what I was going to do when I got back. The fifth thing he showed me was something I found genuinely surprising. Because it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't someone doing something obviously wrong. It was a woman lighting candles around a casket and whispering words over it. And she was a Christian. She went to church. She believed in Jesus. But what she was doing was rooted in the idea that the ritual itself would somehow protect the soul of her deceased husband. That the specific objects and words had power over his eternal destination. And Jesus said, "This is the fifth mistake. Placing greater trust in rituals than in me." He said, "I understand tradition. I understand cultural inheritance. I understand that many rituals simply express love and respect, and those are not wrong. But there is a line, and it is crossed when the ritual begins to carry more weight in someone's heart than the finished work of the cross." He took me to Colossians 2 verse 8. He said, "I warned my people not to be taken captive by human traditions that are empty, that are not rooted in me." Nothing performed after a person has died changes where they are. The decision that determines eternity is made while a person is still alive. It is the decision to receive me, to believe in what I did on the cross, that matters. That is the only thing that matters in terms of eternity. He said, "A candle cannot save. A ceremony cannot save. An object placed in a casket cannot save. And I grieve when my people come to a funeral carrying more confidence in those things than in the gospel I bled and died to give them." Funerals should direct people toward the gospel, not toward superstition, not toward objects, not toward ceremonies that imply something other than grace through faith. Because if someone sitting in that room is not yet a believer, what they observe in those moments matters. What testimony are my people giving in that room? Then the window showed me something that on the surface looked almost harmless. Just people talking at a reception after a burial. But Jesus pointed to one cluster of people specifically, and they were gossiping. Not loudly, not even cruelly. They were just talking. About the family. About some history between certain relatives. About choices the deceased had made that they disagreed with. About financial stuff. About things that had nothing to do with comfort or love or honoring someone's memory. And meanwhile, maybe 20 feet away, the widow was standing alone. Jesus said, "The sixth mistake. Careless words filling a sacred place." He said, "I designed words to carry weight. They are not neutral. What my people say at a funeral, and the way they say it, either adds to the grief in that room or it lifts it. There is rarely a neutral option." He quoted Proverbs 11 verse 13. He said, "A gossip betrays a confidence, but a trustworthy person keeps a secret." Then he said, "You want to know something about that room I just showed you?" The widow who was standing alone, she needed one person to walk over to her. Just one. Not with answers. Not with explanation. Just presence. Just someone willing to stand with her in the weight of it. He said, "But the people who could have done that were occupied with information that had no business being spoken in that room on that day." He said, "I am not asking my people to be perfect in grief. Grief is messy and words sometimes come out wrong. I understand that. But there is a difference between imperfect comfort and deliberate carelessness with someone's pain. Before you speak at a funeral, ask yourself one question. Does this word serve the person carrying the heaviest weight in this room? Or does it only serve my own curiosity or my own need to feel included in something?" Sometimes the most powerful ministry available to a believer at a funeral is silence. Presence without words. Standing with someone in their pain without trying to fill the silence with noise. And then we came to the last one. And he paused before he showed it to me, which he hadn't done with any of the others. He just stopped and looked at me, and I felt like what he was about to say was the one he most wanted me to carry back. He showed me, Not one specific funeral this time. He showed me hundreds of them. A kind of sweeping picture of people leaving funeral services, walking to their cars, going home, eating, turning on their televisions, going to sleep, and resuming life as though nothing had shifted. And Jesus said, "This is the seventh mistake, and possibly the most costly of all, leaving a funeral without examining your own heart." I designed the experience of standing near death to do something in the human soul, something that ordinary days cannot do. When a person is confronted with the reality that life on earth ends, there is a window, a brief window where the heart is open in a way it normally is not. He quoted Psalm 90 verse 12 to me. He said, "Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." He said, "I never intended funerals to be empty ceremonies that people endure and then forget. I intended them to be invitations. Invitations to examine the soul, to ask the real questions, to consider what a person actually believes about eternity, not what they say they believe on a comfortable Sunday morning, but what they actually believe when they are standing next to a casket." He said, "The questions a funeral raises are the most important questions a person will ever face. Is my faith in me? Is my confidence in the resurrection real, or is it just something I say? If today were my last day on earth, where would I stand before God?" Most people leave funerals having thought about the person who died. Far fewer leave having thought about themselves. He looked at me directly and said, "Stacey, that is the invitation I am extending through every single funeral. Come back to me. Examine where your heart actually is. Not where you assume it is, where it actually is. Let the reality of death remind you that your life here is brief, and that what you do with the time you have left matters more than most people allow themselves to believe. Grief is not my enemy. I use grief. I use the weight of loss to open doors in people's hearts that comfort never could. The question is whether my people walk through those doors, or whether they close them as quickly as possible and go back to life as usual." He said, "Every funeral is an invitation to draw closer to me, an invitation I am personally extending. Not just to the person who has died, they are already with me or they are not, and that is settled. I am extending the invitation to the ones who are still standing, to the ones who still have time." There's something he said near the end of our time together that I keep coming back to. He said, "Stacey, most of my people think the spiritual moments in their life happen in church buildings or in quiet morning devotionals. And those moments are real and I am there in them. But some of the most important spiritual moments I arrange happen at funerals. Because at a funeral, the pretending stops, the busyness stops, the distractions fall away, and the heart is left with the most basic questions it will ever face." He said, "I am there at every funeral, every one. Not just as a theological concept but as a present reality. I am there with every widow, every grieving parent, every confused child who doesn't understand why their grandmother is gone. I am there with every person sitting in the back row who doesn't know me yet but who is for the first time seriously wondering if there is something more." He said, "What I need is for my people to represent me well in those moments, to grieve with hope, to speak with care, to release bitterness, to keep the gospel central, to examine their own hearts, to be a testimony in a room that is already more open to eternity than almost any other room they will ever stand in. Do not waste those rooms." And suddenly I was back. My husband was holding my hand. My sister was praying in the corner. The doctor said my heart had stopped for over 4 minutes. But what Jesus showed me during those minutes changed my life forever. I stopped seeing funerals the same way. I began to understand that Jesus is already there, and how we show up matters. I even went to my aunt and made peace with her after years of silence. Now she is one of the closest people in my life. When I lost a close friend later on, I still cried. But I did not fall into hopelessness, because Jesus showed me that death is not the end. He taught me to examine my heart, to grieve with hope, and to release bitterness before it consumes me. Always remember what Jesus said. The greatest hope at a funeral is not memory. It is Him. So if you are hurting, grieve. But do not grieve without hope. Jesus is the only one who has conquered death, and every funeral is an invitation to remember that.